Welcome to The Debate. You can spend 100 hours practicing a speech, like alone in your room, mapping out every single pause and inflection.
Right, perfectly scripted.
Exactly. But the second you step up to a podium and, 50 pairs of eyes lock onto you, your brain just wipes its hard drive completely clean.
Oh, absolutely. It's like your fight or flight system simply hijacks your body at that point.
Yeah, it does. If you are listening to this and you have ever felt your hands shake while holding a microphone, you know exactly what I am talking about.
Yeah, the pressure of the environment triggers this biological threat response. And suddenly, even remembering your own name feels like trying to solve advanced calculus.
Right. So today we are analyzing a conversation drawn from the speaking circle, and it tackles this exact public speaking panic.
It's such a universal fear, too.
It really is, and it brings up a fundamental question for anyone who has ever, frozen in front of a crowd. When it comes to mastering public speaking, does this material suggest that improvement is primarily a mechanical, behavioral process of physical desensitization? Or conversely, is it fundamentally a psychological paradigm shift regarding how we actually connect with an audience?
Exactly. I will be arguing that public speaking as outlined in this text is fundamentally a mechanical skill. It's honed through systematic, physical desensitization and highly structured practice.
And I will be taking the opposing view here, because while, sure, physical practice is obviously part of the process, the true catalyst for mastery in this material is deeply cognitive.
How so? Well, it's about a radical mindset shift. It's changing how you view the audience, moving from this terrifying performance to an act of authentic human connection.
Okay, well, let me lay out why the behavioral mechanics are actually the true foundation here.
Go for it.
The text makes a very direct comparison between public speaking and lifting weights at the gym. Like if you struggle to lift a weight, you don't sit down and psychoanalyze your relationship with gravity, right?
No, but
you just start lifting lighter weights to build the muscle. The foundation of the material's argument is that confidence is not a starting point, and it's not a psychological switch you just flip.
Okay, but the problem with the gym analogy, and I think it's a big problem, is that it completely ignores the psychological weight of an audience.
I don't see how it ignores it.
Well, when you lift a dumbbell, the dumbbell isn't judging your intelligence, It's not questioning your right to be in the room.
Yeah. But the way to handle that judgment is still incredibly mechanical. Just look at the immediate, concrete solutions the text provides for handling nervousness.
You mean the breathing exercises?
Yes, exactly. It doesn't tell the speaker to meditate on their childhood trauma. It gives a rigid, physical protocol. Take a slow breath, relax your shoulders, and deliberately pace your first sentence.
Right, but those are just surface level.
But this isn't just generic advice, it's behavioral engineering. Biologically, taking that slow breath down-regulates the sympathetic nervous system. It literally forces your heart rate to drop.
I agree the physiology is there, but...
And the text specifically highlights pacing the first sentence because physically, the first few seconds mechanically set the rhythm for the entire speech. If you rush that first physical breath, the rest of the presentation just spirals out of control.
Right.
Think of it like a pilot going through a pre-flight checklist. When an engine fails, a pilot doesn't search their soul, they run a mechanical checklist to override the panic.
Okay, but a checklist only works if you aren't fundamentally terrified of the airplane itself.
Well,
hear me out. The most pivotal piece of advice in the entire text, which is labeled explicitly as step 1, is this. Stop trying to sound impressive. Start trying to be understood.
yeah, I remember that line.
That is not a mechanical adjustment on a checklist. That is a radical cognitive shift. It demands that you completely restructure how you view your relationship with the people in the room.
I hear you, but that shift is still rooted in a structural approach to preparation. Like, take the text's strict rule against word-for-word memorization.
Right. It tells you not to do that.
It tells you to structurally memorize 3 pillars instead, right? The opening, the main points, and the ending. And why does it do that?
Because memorizing a script traps you.
Because from a cognitive architecture standpoint, rote memorization creates a brittle framework. If you forget one single word, you trigger this massive domino effect of panic. It's a structural failure.
But the text frames that rule as a necessity because memorizing every word forces you into the mindset of an actor, reciting lines. It feeds the ego's desire to look perfect.
It is practical, though.
It is. But when the text tells speakers they are not performing, but simply talking to people, it subverts the entire traditional framework of public speaking. It demands a psychological shift.
From performance to connection, you mean?
Exactly. From how do I look, which is, an ego-driven, performance-based threat monitoring state, to what do they need to understand. By focusing on the audience's needs, you actually trick your brain's amygdala into dropping its threat response.
But you're still doing it to manage the physical symptoms.
Not exactly. The text explicitly says you shouldn't try to, quote, kill nervousness. You learn to handle it mentally. If the goal were pure physical desensitization, the ultimate aim would be the total eradication of fear. But the text embraces fear as a permanent fixture.
Well, let's look at the primary tool the text actually provides for improvement, because it's a highly rigorous, purely mechanical exercise.
The daily video recording?
Yes, it instructs the speaker to record themselves talking for just 1 minute every day, about anything. Your day, a movie you watched, the food you ate. And then you have to watch it back.
Right?
This is exactly like an athlete reviewing game tape. It is an entirely diagnostic process designed to, audit external behavior.
I come at it from a different way, actually. You call it objective data collection, but the text specifically uses the word painful to describe this recording exercise.
Because nobody likes their own voice.
Exactly. But why is watching a 1-minute video of yourself talking about a sandwich painful? It certainly isn't because identifying a filler word physically hurts.
Well, no.
It's painful because it attacks the ego. It is deeply uncomfortable to confront the reality of how we present ourselves to the world. We have this evolutionary fear of being ostracized by the tribe, and looking at our own flaws triggers that primal insecurity.
Okay, but
So therefore, that 1-minute recording exercise is actually a form of psychological exposure therapy.
I would argue it is diagnostic because the speaker is otherwise blind to their own physical tics. The text explicitly directs the speaker to watch the tape and notice their physical output.
To a degree, yes.
It asks, are you looking down? Are you saying too much? Are you talking too fast? You cannot fix a physical habit that you don't physically notice.
But the ums aren't the enemy.
They are if they distract from the message. This implies the path to mastery is auditing your external behavior and systematically correcting the mechanical errors.
I don't think it's about systematic correction, though.
The pain is simply the discomfort of realizing your pacing is off or your posture is poor so that you can consciously edit those flaws out of your next repetition.
See, if it were purely about mechanical perfection, they would be striving for a flawless vocal performance.
Not necessarily flawless, just better.
But notice that the text explicitly states later on that public speaking is not about having a perfect voice. The goal isn't to eradicate every or engineer perfect posture.
True, it does say that.
The text states that mastery is about clarity, confidence, and connection. The filler words in the speaking speed are secondary. The primary goal is getting comfortable with your authentic self.
Even if your authentic self says 100 times a minute.
If they connect with the audience, yes, the pain of watching that video is the pain of self-acceptance. You are exposing yourself to your own image until you stop cringing at your own existence on screen. It is desensitizing the speaker to their own self-image, lowering the ego's defenses.
The text does explicitly ask you to notice those flaws, to fix them though, not just to make peace with them. But let's look at the actual architecture of the larger program the text prescribes.
The 7-day challenge.
Exactly. If the daily recording is the method, the progression of the 7-day challenge really reveals the true nature of the process. This progression isn't a journey of spiritual self-discovery. It is a highly engineered behavioral stress test.
A stress test designed to break down the psychological barrier of performance, I would argue.
I see it as a stress test designed to build behavioral muscle memory under increasing cognitive load.
How so?
Well, the challenge is an escalating progression. It moves you from low-stakes, highly familiar data like simply introducing yourself on day 1.
Right.
To introducing passion, to teaching mechanics, to telling a short story where you have to manage narrative arc, and eventually forcing you into extemporaneous, unscripted speaking.
It's definitely challenging.
It forces the brain to handle higher and higher cognitive loads while maintaining physical composure. It is progressive overload. You are carefully increasing the weight on the bar each day, so the speaker builds the physical and neurological pathways to execute speech under unpredictable conditions.
Okay, you outline the escalating difficulty perfectly, but you are entirely ignoring the text's own conclusion about the result of this specific exercise.
Which part?
What does the text say happens when the speaker compares the recording from day 7 back to day 1?
Well, it states the speaker will realize they didn't become a different person.
Right. You didn't become a different person, you just got more comfortable being yourself. That is the verbatim realization the text promises.
Okay.
If this were purely about progressive overload and behavioral muscle memory, the grand prize of the 7-day challenge would be, look how much smoother your narrative arc is on day 7, or look how you completely eliminated your filler words.
I mean, they probably did do those things.
Sure, maybe, but the text doesn't highlight mechanical improvement as the core achievement. It highlights psychological comfort.
Yes, but the psychological comfort is a direct result of the mechanical competence. You feel comfortable because you know you can execute the behavior.
I think the mechanics are merely a Trojan horse for self-acceptance. The rigorous schedule of the 7 days gives the anxious mind a task to hold on to, like a behavioral distraction, really, while the actual work of lowering the ego's defenses takes place in the background.
A distraction?
Yeah, by forcing the speaker to share an opinion or tell a story unscripted, the exercise strips away the protective armor of a rehearsed performance. It forces them to realize that the audience doesn't want a flawless orator. They want a human being.
Well, the realization isn't that you built a brand new skill set. It's that the skill set was always there, just buried under the psychological pressure of trying to be someone else.
Okay, well, if we move from how the speaker feels internally to how they actually execute externally, we have to look at nonverbal communication.
Let's do that.
How does this internal comfort actually translate to the audience? Because when we examine the text instructions on eye contact and gestures, this is where the behavioral rubber really meets the road.
And I would say this is exactly where the psychological argument becomes most undeniable.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because the text puts incredibly specific mechanical guardrails in place for the body.
Guardrails like what?
Well, the text explicitly states that for hand gestures, the rule is they should support words, not distract from them. That implies a conscious, mechanical moderation of physical movement.
I disagree that it has to be conscious.
You can't just let your hands wildly fly around. You must behaviorally script your movements to align with your vocal cadence so you don't visually overwhelm the audience.
Right, but...
And regarding eye contact, the text gives a strict behavioral instruction. Look around naturally, connect, then move on. It is a behavioral loop. Scan, lock, release.
Scan, lock, release?
Yes. This is a foundational technique taught to nervous speakers to prevent them from either staring at the floor or staring blankly at the back wall over everyone's heads. It's a mechanical technique to simulate connection and keep the body regulated.
You use the word simulate connection, which is incredibly telling.
Well, simulate until it becomes natural.
But the text explicitly warns against that kind of over-engineered simulation. It actively mocks the hyper-mechanical approach to eye contact. It tells the speaker not to stare at one person like you're trying to read their mind.
Which is exactly a behavioral correction to prevent staring.
No, it is a warning against treating human beings like inanimate checkpoints on a scanning loop. When the text says connect, then move on, the operative word is connect.
You still have to physically move your eyes, though.
Yes, but you cannot mechanize genuine human connection. If you're standing on a stage, internally counting to 3 seconds before moving your gaze to the next quadrant of the room, the audience feels that emptiness. It feels robotic.
It's better than staring at the floor.
Furthermore, look at the exact wording regarding hand gestures. The text explicitly says, don't force them, let them happen naturally.
They still have to support the words, which, as I said, requires conscious oversight.
They will support the words automatically if the psychology is correct. The text is proving that if you adopt the foundational mindset, that you are not performing, but simply trying to be understood by another human being, Your body will naturally follow without requiring you to mechanically script your elbows.
It sounds nice in theory, but
Think about it. Have you ever noticed that people use perfect hand gestures and perfect eye contact when they are passionately explaining something to a friend at a coffee shop?
well, sure, but in a casual conversation, the stakes are completely different.
But the mechanics of communication are exactly the same. In the coffee shop, they aren't consciously thinking, oh, I should raise my left hand now to emphasize this point. They are just trying to be understood. The psychology is perfectly aligned with the task.
Right.
The moment you put that exact same person on a stage, they freeze. Their hands suddenly feel like awkward, heavy appendages because their psychology has shifted from connection to performance.
I get the coffee shop analogy. It's illustrative.
The text is arguing that if you fix the mindset, if you return to the coffee shop psychology, the natural mechanics of human communication, which you already possess, will unlock themselves. You don't need to learn how to move your hands. You need to unlearn the fear that is freezing them.
But the coffee shop analogy breaks down when you factor in the biology of a high-stakes environment.
The adrenaline, you mean?
Exactly. A person sitting at a coffee shop isn't experiencing an adrenaline spike that fundamentally alters their physiology. Put them in front of 500 people, and their heart rate doubles. Their breathing becomes incredibly shallow. Their mouth goes dry.
Sure, biology happens.
The text's specific instruction to take a slow breath, relax the shoulders, and pace the first sentence calmly is an acknowledgement that psychology alone cannot overcome a massive adrenaline dump.
I wouldn't say it can't overcome it.
You can have the most authentic, connection-driven mindset in the world, but if your sympathetic nervous system is firing on all cylinders, you will tremble. You absolutely need a physical protocol to override the biological fight-or-flight response. The mechanics are what save you when the psychology falters under pressure.
The breath is certainly physical, yes. But the ultimate purpose of that breath is to restore cognitive control so the mindset can take over. The text doesn't end by celebrating the physical eradication of fear. It ends with a deeply psychological realization about vulnerability.
Right. Well, when synthesizing the source material's perspective on mastering this fear, I keep returning to the highly specific physical structures provided.
Naturally.
From the deliberate, slow breath before the very first sentence, to biologically calm the nervous system, to the structured pacing of not rushing that opening line, to the rigid avoidance of word-for-word memorization in favor of a three-part architectural outline.
Yeah, it's a solid framework.
The text lays out a comprehensive behavioral system. The 7-day recording challenge is the ultimate proof of this, I think. It's a deliberate behavioral repetition designed to audit physical flaws, habituate the speaker to cognitive load, and build competence. To me, this proves that public speaking is an external craft, honed through deliberate pacing, physical management of adrenaline, and structured repetition.
And, I absolutely acknowledge the value of those exercises. But viewing them strictly as physical drills misses the underlying soul of the text.
The soul.
Yeah. The core thesis of this material is that the ultimate goal is not to become a flawless, fearless automaton. The goal is a profound mindset shift, moving from the ego-driven anxiety of performance to the authentic vulnerability of connection.
Okay, I see your point.
By accepting that nervousness is simply part of the process, and by focusing purely on being understood rather than being impressive, the speaker is freed from the paralyzing grip of perfectionism. The recording exercises aren't building a robotic new speaker. They are stripping away the fear and the ego, so the real person can simply talk.
Well, we can certainly agree that whether one views the text as a manual for behavioral engineering or a guide for psychological reframing, both perspectives recognize that the source material vehemently rejects the myth of the naturally confident speaker.
Oh, 100%.
It entirely dismisses the idea that you either have the genetic gift of gab or you are doomed to silence.
The text beautifully democratizes the skill, and it entirely dismisses the paralyzing goal of perfectionism. Whether you're auditing your filler words on tape or confronting your primal fear of the tribe's judgment, the shared conclusion is that perfection is a trap.
Absolutely.
We both agree with the text's central underlying sentiment. The less you try to be a flawless performer, the less terrifying the entire ordeal feels.
It really highlights the incredible complexity of human communication, honestly. It requires both the rigorous discipline to practice the mechanics, to record the tape, structure the outline, and breathe through the adrenaline dump, and the immense vulnerability to simply be oneself in front of a crowd.
It's a balancing act.
It suggests that mastering our presence in front of others is a much deeper pursuit than just learning to project our voices. There is so much more to explore regarding how we construct and present our identities to the world when we are under pressure.
It's a powerful reminder that the audience isn't a hostile entity waiting to judge you. They are just people waiting to understand you.
We will leave it there for today. To borrow the final encouragement from the text itself, which is a fitting thought to linger on next time you step up to a podium or even just speak up in a meeting. Keep speaking, keep improving, and don't be afraid of your voice.